age. I'm 22 years old. Currently going to school here in South Carolina, or Georgetown Tech. I'm doing my nursing stuff, and
I
I
gotcha.
voted for Donald Trump. I cannot lie.
Okay. Why did you vote for Donald Trump? What do you love about Donald Trump and how he's doing so far?
Um, I think one of the most important things for me, like most other people, was like seriously like during that first Trump presidency. I'm not gonna lie, like things were looking pretty good and everything. But the only reason I feel like Trump is bad, I feel like for the average American,
Do you think
Trump
these tariffs are going to be
isn't.
a good thing for the average American?
Um, in the long run, yes, but I feel like there's a way you can like, I don't know, cause you have to realize like I don't think the stock market is a good way at kind of judging where the economy is at. Cause even under Joe Biden, like the stock market was doing so good,
Yeah.
and
And CPI was good too.
and
That's something I think
a
you should.
lot of these
You go ahead.
a lot of but this is the thing, a lot of these big corporations, I'm sorry to cut you off,
No, you go. Go ahead.
a lot of these big corporations take advantage of the fact that they can build all these big factories and all this stuff in these other countries, and it kind of does like leave the average American. I feel like, I'm sorry, I'm not a political expert, but
You're good, man.
when I think about this, I feel like it does leave the average American screwed out of a job, because now, for example, CEO of Apple is going to take advantage of somebody in another country for cheap labor instead of
Did you say
Americans.
you voted for Trump?
I did.
It doesn't sound like you really voted for Trump. You're sitting there saying things that like you're not so sure about.
What do you mean?
Like you're saying that you can see where they're going to try to avoid paying taxes, or that the prices could go up because of these tariffs. You seem a little
Yeah,
unsure
and they
about
are.
that.
They definitely are. I was just seeing now that some of the tariffs are going to be increasing the price of the iPhone for the what next. But that's the thing. I don't think these tariffs are like a long term thing. It's just so they can work out a deal. Shit, I think they were talking about like trying to do like a 0-0, and I don't know. It just, I think when you're taxing another country's goods way more, taxes really do screw out the average American. Like when you raise taxes, you got to think, a business corporation, they don't care if you raise the taxes. They're just gonna make the product more. That's
Expensive.
why another reason, like
I mean, look, man. Let me explain something. So the thing is that these tariffs right now are going to absolutely increase prices. Hey, by the way, guys, as you're coming in here, please hit that like button. Please hit that like and let's get some hearts. Look, we're at 1.7k hearts. Let's get us up to about like let's say 3k hearts. Can we get to 3k? Come on, I know you guys can do that. So I'm going to call you Phil for a minute. The thing about this is that look, it's interesting to me you voted for Donald Trump, but yet everything you're mentioning right now sounds like you would have been better off not voting for Trump. I'm not saying you had to vote for Kamala, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense why you would have voted for Donald Trump given what you're saying. So, like,
I think,
yeah.
I don't know. I just think like, especially, I think Trump is definitely a businessman. And I seriously, I know this sounds crazy, but I think Trump is literally sacrificing the people so he can get a better deal, and like in a better, because think about it, nobody in China is driving American vehicles. Like we are kind of like very underused. We use China a lot in trade, and it's very empowering. And I was in the military, and I feel like what we're witnessing nowadays is like, it's like a global power shift, and China is like really expanding around the globe. If you listen to what Xi Jinping is saying, he's literally saying that they're gonna take over the globe. And this is the reason I feel like I voted for Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I don't I think like a lot of Americans are pretty central, like moderate. I do believe like, in abortion or whatever. But I feel like in the deeper aspect of things, I really do believe that Trump was the better option for America. And I believe in the long run. I think by this time next year, the stock market recovery is probably going to be one of the best they've ever seen. The power of the dollar is going to be
What
back.
makes you think it's going to be the best thing you've ever seen? What leads you to believe that? Like all of the tariffs indicate that we're gonna. We saw J.P. Morgan, for example, say that we're gonna have a 60% recession. We
But
saw.
these aren't permanent. These are not permanent tariffs.
What
These
makes
are
you
not.
believe
These
these
are
aren't
not.
permanent tariffs?
What makes you believe that they are?
What makes me believe they are is that Donald Trump ran on them, and the fact that every time he says that he's going to do a 90-day pause, he ends up implementing the tariffs right back again. And I'm not saying that as far as
This is another thing. This is another thing, though. In 1914, when federal taxes, because if you look at pictures of New York City in 1914, what you will see is when the government didn't even make federal income tax, they were still building a pretty impressive infrastructure. And back then, there was no federal income tax. You want to know how the government made the money?
Oh,
Tariffs.
tariffs. Yeah. So, first of all, do you know what happened in the 1920s after the war? What happened in the 1920s is that we became somewhat of an isolationist country. In pair with that, we also implemented the Smoot-Hawley Act, which then implemented record high tariffs. And what we're seeing right now is we saw the Great Depression happen after the 1930s. And so we're seeing the same thing play out right now in this country. We're seeing record high tariffs. We're seeing the stock market fluctuate and see, drops like we've never seen them before.
Yeah, but
And
this is
people's
the thing.
retirements
I mean,
being
this
wiped
is
out.
another thing. People in the stock market, people always complaining about the stock market and eat the rich, but like 90% of the stock market is owned by like the top 8%. So why are people? I don't get why
Well, okay,
people are
wait,
looking at the
because you
stock
do want,
market right now.
yeah, you do
Like,
understand that inflation affects the everyday American because one thing that companies love to do is they love to protect.
oh yes,
They love to protect their profit. Right.
I know how inflation affects the average American. I actually
Okay,
was an
then.
American from 2020 to 2024 under
Okay.
one of the most craziest inflations we've ever had.
So you do understand that there is a difference, or that when you talk about the left, you find it funny that the left says eat the rich, and then that the left is, all of a sudden upset at the fact that the stock market is going down. It's because it affects every single American, even those that say eat the rich. It's the same people. And by the way, for
I'm
everyone
gonna
in
be
chat, real
honest.
quick, I
Like
just want to address
nothing.
this. Everyone in chat that's saying inflation is down. Inflation is down, correct. The CPI is down. But it's funny because none of you guys mentioned, and I've gotten to this argument before many times when people will say CPI is, they'll kind of flip flop on that. But a lot of the times when I talk to MAGA, they would say, oh, inflation was high under Joe Biden. I say, well, the inflation CPI numbers are down. They got up to 9%. He brought it down to 2%.
Well,
And they say, oh, well, it's
well,
cumulative.
one more thing. I don't want to think of you like I don't want someone to look at me and be like, "Oh, MAGA," and I don't want to look at you like, "Oh, lefty." You know what I mean? That's not how I'm looking at people. By the way, I
100%.
think that's crazy.
Well, let me ask you
I
this.
just, I
Yeah,
don't.
I don't think
Yes,
I'm gonna be honest. I don't think you're MAGA. I don't think you're MAGA. I think that you voted somebody that more than likely, and maybe I'm wrong in this, that I think you voted based upon your upbringing, what you believed to be, that your friends, your families, things like that, somewhere that's just kind of how you've always voted, and you've kind of always been left to kind of defend those positions. I don't necessarily ascribe you to MAGA. I have encountered MAGA. They are very easy to spot. I don't think that you are MAGA. Do I think that you are MAGA light? It's possible. I just think that you're maybe a little lost in the sauce. You know what I mean? And I just don't think that you're quite to MAGA yet. So and I'm glad that you wouldn't describe me being a leftist. I was once a person who voted for Donald Trump. I voted for Donald Trump in 17 and in 20. I voted for Mitt Romney in 14. This election was the first time ever that I voted for Kamala Harris.
we kind of got the same deal, kind of like on the opposite side then, because like we were definitely like I remember my mom growing up was like definitely into Obama. She was like hella supportive. I couldn't vote during that time. Trump's first thing, I couldn't vote for her, so it was a really unique like I don't know. I think that is kind of. I'm glad we ended on this, but I do gotta go.
I got you,
I
bud.
mean,
I appreciate you coming in here, Phil, and we can talk again some other time. All right, buddy?
yeah, have a good one. God bless
All
you.
right, you too. All right, let's bring in the next guest here, Christopher. Let's see if Christopher will jump in. They haven't even felt the impacts of the tariffs yet. Oh, we were absolutely going to feel that. Christopher, what's going on? What's your age, state, and who did you vote for?
41, North Carolina, Trump.
Trump. All righty. Why did you vote for Donald Trump?
That's the same thing. Like for everything he did. So, can I ask you a question now?
Of course. Go ahead. What you got?
How has Trump affected your personal life in the past 3 months?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, egg prices, that's a number one.
Your
They have
personal life.
my personal life, egg prices have gone up. So my grocery bill has
down.
gone up pretty
down.
significantly. So
So, are you gonna lie and just say that the egg prices
no,
haven't gone down?
I can pull CPI data
Go
from.
ahead,
Let's
pull it
pull
up,
up. Yeah, let's pull it up. So the
They've gone down
CPI.
59%.
Yeah, no, I can talk about right here. So the CPI numbers that people have been referring to, saying that inflation is going down, which is true to some degree.
I
The
wasn't talking about
CPI number,
inflation. I'm talking about egg prices. You
yeah,
said egg prices. I'm talking about inflation.
egg prices. We're getting to that. So we can look at this. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This was just announced literally yesterday.
Prices, not inflation.
I'm getting there, buddy. So it says here, driven by primarily by a 5.9% increase in the index for eggs. The index for meats and poultry, fish, and eggs rose 1.3% in March. The beef index also increased over the month, rising 1.2%, and the index for other food at home increased 0.5%. The prices that you believe are going down are actually due in part to the wholesale egg prices. It has nothing to do with actual retail prices. Why? Because retailers want to keep their prices high, and you can look up any kind of article, business article, it makes a whole lot of sense. Because of all the losses that they had incurred, they are trying to make up for those lost profits.
Okay, so you can talk about all that you want, but like, do you agree that the new president inherits the old president's stuff before he changes it?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because Donald Trump inherited a wonderful economy from Joe Biden and then ended up ruining that momentum by implementing his terrible tariff policy. So yeah, I do believe it. And in fact, keep in mind, by the way, if we're going to use that,
like 2016 or 2020 or 2024.
2024, I said he inherited Joe Biden's economy.
Yeah, like the egg prices being high and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no. So egg prices were going up.
Yeah, they were high. So yeah,
they were going. I'm glad you mentioned. Okay, I'm glad you mentioned this. So do you think then that the inflation that happened under Joe Biden was in part due to some of Donald Trump's policies? Would you be willing to admit to that?
Like apparently it took 4 years.
It took 4 years. What do you mean?
Well, Biden was in office for 4 years. And you can say like every president inherits the other president's thing, but after a couple of years, they can either make it go up or go down. But Biden had 4 years, and apparently, Trump inherited Biden's high egg prices and high gas prices.
You keep going back to that, but I asked you specifically: do you believe that some of that inflation that was incurred? It's a very simple question.
Yeah, but like Biden had 4 years to make it go down, right?
He did, and he did,
and it didn't.
It did. You can actually look at.
Then why are you guys bitching about eggs and gas prices?
Well, because again, Donald Trump is imposing tariffs on everyday American goods.
No, that's new. That's new. He inherited high egg prices and gas prices. You guys complain.
So gas prices came down under Joe Biden. They were not back to pre C-19 levels.
When Trump became president, all your little TikTok lives said, "Why are egg prices down?" He said he was going to do it on day one. He was going to do it on day one.
Yeah, he said he did. He did say that.
Okay, well, apparently egg prices were high, right?
Well, it depends on how you define high. Were they record high levels or were they going up? What do you mean?
No, if you're complaining about egg prices being high and Donald Trump not stopping it on day one, that means it came from Biden, right?
Wait, so you're saying that Donald Trump no. This is interesting how you're playing this because you're not mentioning how you're saying that Donald Trump made a promise to lower prices on day one.
On day one, and nobody believed that. Go ahead.
Nobody believed that. So nobody voted for Donald Trump because of the economy.
No. I mean, you Democrats and liberals believe that, but
so then the economy was not the number one issue for Matt. Is that what you're telling me?
Like us. We have common sense. We know that a person can't stop it on day one, but we also know that
y'all have common sense. Then tell me then, are you going to agree with me that some of these tariffs will increase prices?
Okay, no. Are you going to sit there and say that you believe that a person can make egg prices drop on day one?
Do I believe that? Not inherently, but I'm not the one sitting there making.
Why are you liberal, Democrat lives sitting there? Let pass.
I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak to myself. Work with me, not everybody else.
Prices down because you're all just like, what the fuck?
Why are we saying that? Why do you think we're saying that, Chris?
Well, because they're already high from Biden.
No, the reason why we're saying that is because Donald Trump made a promise to his cult following.
Okay, but he made a promise, and the promise was still kept.
The promise was kept. So egg prices came down. Retail egg prices came down. Retail egg prices came down. No, they didn't. Retail egg prices gone up. I just pulled up the CPI chart that proved you wrong.
I just been to the Walmart. They're already down $3.
Oh, so your anecdotal experience speaks for everybody else in the country?
Not my anecdotal experience, my actual experience.
Like no, it's your anecdotal experience. That's exactly what it is. Your self-experience, not the entire country. I can go by the CPI numbers, the same CPI numbers that MAGA went by.
I've already Googled it. Like the whole across the United States is down $5.
The entire country is down by $5. Do you have a source for that?
Yeah, I can look it up.
Yeah, you got to look. Okay, yeah. I mean, you can't point. Where'd you get that from?
No, I've already found it. Like the national egg prices.
National egg prices. That's the wholesale egg
59%.
prices that are down by $5. That's what you're referring to, not the retail egg
The
prices. They're
national,
completely
like the
different.
United States, national egg prices have been down
Yes.
59%.
Yes,
Like
that
they
is
have
referring
been
to
dropping.
wholesale
They
egg
have
prices.
been.
That is not referring to retail prices. They are completely different. Wholesale egg prices are what then are sold to grocers to then sell themselves. So the end product that you see is bought from wholesalers. And so why you might be wondering, well, why is it that wholesale prices are down and that retail prices have not gone down? Oh, that's right, because retailers are trying to price gouge. It sure could use a Kamala Harris
Oh.
price gouging law, huh? We could really use it
Okay.
right now, right?
Okay, no. Go ahead. Is that Trump's fault?
Trump's fault for what?
Retailers price gouging?
You could say it's his fault in some degree.
No, it's not.
You can say it's his fault to some
Don't
degree.
lie. Don't lie.
What-
Just say it.
The fact that price or
Trump
retailers.
made
Wait,
prices
okay,
go
hold on.
down.
Let me ask you this: Do you think that let me ask you this: Do you think that retailers are price gouging these eggs?
Well, apparently now, because you saying it.
Okay, so you would agree with me then that
So,
egg prices are staying high while
Is
wholesale
that
egg
Trump's
prices are
fault?
going down.
Is that Trump's fault?
Do I think it's Trump's fault? It's his economy. He inherits it, right? That's it. He owns it. Isn't that the idea?
No. Trump made the price of eggs go down.
Where?
You've already-
We're going to circles here. We're going to
No,
circles.
you've already agreed with that.
Wholesale or retail?
You said wholesale.
Which one?
Yes.
Okay, so wholesale has
You
gone
said,
down.
Like
What- and
wholesale's gone down because of Trump.
Can I ask you something? How do you think those prices went down? How do you think those prices went down? Okay, wait. No, this is interesting actually. So, do you attribute those wholesale egg prices going down due to Donald Trump?
Well, no, it's just because the culling of the chickens during the Biden administration, and then the new chickens growing up. It only takes about
You
3
don't
to
think that any of that has in
Will
part
you
to
stop
do?
interrupting me? Will you stop
Well,
interrupting me?
this is my
It only
life.
takes about 3 to 4 months for new chickens to start laying, and then the new chickens start laying.
So when did these
and then-
new chickens start laying?
Well, he culled the chickens in what? What was
Come on, man. Look, here's the thing about it right
no,
now.
come on, man. You know exactly what I'm talking about, but you just don't want to admit it.
No, because the thing is that Joe Biden did exactly what every other previous administration has ever done when it comes to these
and
birds.
he should.
Yeah. Okay. So again, you have yet to have explained to me
But
how
then
Donald
why do
Trump.
you liberals blame Trump for egg prices when
What?
when
Okay,
the-
you're missing the plot here. Let me
when-
explain.
If you had
I'm-
common sense, knowing that the chickens got
That's-
cold. there's
Okay,
no more
you're
chicken
missing
eggs.
why they're complaining about Trump. They're not complaining about Trump necessarily inherently bringing down egg prices, although that is certainly a valid argument. The reason they're complaining is because Donald Trump made a promise to his followers, his cult
On day
followers,
one.
on bringing down grocery prices on day one. And as I've pointed out numerous times, grocery prices have not come down. Wholesale prices are not the end product that you buy. That is not what you buy at the
They
grocery
are
store.
going down.
Wholesale prices are going down. Retail prices are not. What part do you not get to understand about
Yes, they
that?
are.
Are
Retail
you?
prices are going down.
Where are they going down? Show me the retail prices because
At
I
the
just
stores
read
I've
to you.
been to.
Did I or did I not just read to you the CPI that
You
just
read to me
said?
everything you want, but
I'm working
go
off
to
of
the local
facts, not
grocery
feelings,
store.
my guy.
If anybody in here is listening to this crap, tell him at your own grocery store your prices are going down.
That is an anecdotal.
Because I don't want to
No,
hear what you say.
I know. I want
wanna
to hear.
what the people that
I'm
go
glad
there.
you say that. I want to go to the survey that I'm looking at right here that is explaining
Why-
the
why
fact that
don't
the
you
egg
bring-
prices went up.
No, if you're so sure of yourself, why don't you bring someone else up?
That sounds great, Chris. I appreciate you coming in here, buddy.
Yeah, thank
All right, let's bring in the next person. We got Coca-Cola Bear. By the way, guys, hey, make sure you hit that like button. Look, we're at 3.2 thousand likes. Please get that up to 4,000 likes. I know you guys can do it. There's 139 of you in here. By the way, guys, on my YouTube channel, welcome in, guys. I see a bunch of different people in here. What poll? Run it back. 70% of America voted MAGA fools. Welcome in, guys. Welcome in. All right. So Coca-Cola. Who did you vote for? What is your age? And what's your state? There you go.
In 2016, I voted for Trump in Colorado.
Mhm.
In 2020, I voted for Trump in Illinois. And in 2024-ish, or November of last year, I guess, I voted for Trump in South Carolina, 32.
All right. So what led you to vote for Donald Trump? What was your number one issue?
Well, you take a left-leaning news source like CNN, right? And CNN put out an article that said in 2024, most Americans earning less than 200,000 were living paycheck to paycheck. There were more Americans in 2024 living paycheck to paycheck than in 2020. And they were making over $150,000 per household, my guy. So the economy was doing so great under Joe Biden. Then why were Americans struggling 4 years after he was elected?
So you said it was CNN, more Americans living paycheck to paycheck?
In 2024 than in 2020.
More families making over $150,000 are living paycheck to paycheck. October 27th of 2024.
Absolutely terrible. Your guy had 4 years to fix the economy. 4 years.
And he did. He did a
lent
great
him
job.
Our trust.
Yeah, he did a great job.
Betrayed us, and he stabbed us in the back. And the
He did a
Democrats
great
in
job.
America.
No, he did a great job. He did a great job. He brought it out. How
You're
did he do a
making
horrible job?
$150,000 a year, and you're living paycheck to paycheck in 2024. That is absolutely terrible. Terrible.
Let's see. Analyze. Authors analysis find people who live paycheck to paycheck as those who dedicate more than 90% of household income to necessities, which include gasoline, food, utilities, internet, public transportation, childcare, and housing costs. Across all income, households that earn less than 30 or 50,000 a year saw the highest proportion, around 35%. Okay, so at less than 150,000, it looks like it's actually interesting because it says households that earn less than $50,000 a year saw the highest proportion, around 35% of people living paycheck to paycheck so far this year. The question I would propose to you is, what was it prior to that, and what was it under Donald Trump? Oh, look at this one. Americans are paying about 20% more for everything nowadays compared to before the pandemic, which is true because inflation is compounding, and so I'm not denying that inflation went up under Joe Biden, but the reason as to why it went up is absolutely in part due to Donald Trump. However, the inflation rate came down from 9% down to 2.4% when Joe Biden left office. So the inflation rate cooled dramatically.
Well, guess what? When more people are living paycheck to paycheck, they don't have money to spend. So yeah, you're taking everyone's money by making them pay extraordinarily high prices at the grocery store, extraordinarily high prices at the gasoline, and credit cards were maxed out to levels no one has ever seen before in 2024.
Oh, wait, it says it in here. It says one reason the authors of the analysis offer in their report is that higher income households may have bought larger, more expensive homes and consequently have bigger mortgages. And often along with bigger homes come bigger insurance costs, property taxes, and utility bills. So in other words, what they were doing is called, what is it called? A creep? Wage creep or something. I remember there's some kind of word for it, where basically the more money you make, the more you spend on various goods to try to meet that income level, to meet with your friends and families and everything else. So essentially they had enough money to buy into a bigger mortgage. That sounds like a great economy. It just seems like they're terrible with personal finances.
Sounds like a terrible economy.
Sounds like a great economy.
You're blaming more Americans for living paycheck to paycheck under Joe Biden than any other president in the history of America.
Do you agree or disagree that Americans tend to more often than not be terrible with their personal finances? Do you agree or disagree?
We're a consumer-driven economy. I 100% agree. It's one of the reasons why these tariffs will work.
You think that these tariffs will work? Let's dive into that. Why do you think these tariffs will work?
They've worked the first time.
They worked the first time. What was it the first time? What were those tariffs the first time?
Unbelievable economic growth.
Unbelievable economic growth.
More jobs.
What were those tariffs? You haven't told me what these tariffs were. What were these specific tariffs?
Minority unemployment, the results of these tariffs, was at a record low under Donald Trump.
You are not explaining to me what these tariffs were. What were these tariffs?
They were tariffs directed specifically at China.
Oh, specifically at China. And what was it on in China?
Basically, it was a blanket tariff on China. But
it was not a blanket tariff, if I'm not mistaken. It was a specific tariff specifically to steel and aluminum. So the difference here, you have
your obscure data points. Okay, so
I'm not working off obscure data points.
Trick questions. Just tell me the data that you're looking at instead of trying to ask trick questions.
Sure. Oh, it's not a trick question. It's to say that you are asking me, and you're telling me that Donald Trump's economy the first time around was so great, due in part to his tariffs, even though his tariffs then are dramatically different than they are now. You would have to
be different now.
They have to be different now. Okay, so then we would agree then that they are different, right?
Yes.
So then how can you sit there and say that the same tariffs that happened, or the tariffs that happened under his first administration that worked so well, are going to somehow work this one if they're different? How would you say? How could you say that they're going to be the same? In fact, I would argue that that actually goes against your argument, and it shows that. By the way, one of the big things that they found out about those tariffs on China was
Not
because
arguing. First of all, we're having a discussion here. Don't argue.
arguing, discussion, debate, whatever. This is a show that I like to do some kind of a debate on, whether you want to call it a discussion. I do like discussions as well. But here's the thing I want to say. When we talk about these tariffs now are blanket tariffs. They're not targeted tariffs. And one of the things that
Biden left every single one of those tariffs in place. Yes
he
or
did.
no?
You're right. He did leave some of the steel and aluminum
So
tariffs.
the tariffs that you're against, your president left in place because
Wasn't my president.
Right?
I voted for Donald Trump in 20, and I voted for Kamala Harris in 24. So they wasn't my president. And I know I can't back that up, but I can tell you I voted for Romney in 14, Trump in 16, Trump in 20.
Tariffs the first time, as they stayed in place, but now all of a sudden,
Because
you change your mind on tariffs.
this is a zero-sum game you're playing. This is
quote unquote.
Let's be very clear.
discussion or
Hold on.
argument,
Let's
Whatever
be-
show you. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's be very clear. You are playing a zero-sum game right now. You are saying
That's
that
what
I
you're
am.
doing, my guy.
No, hold on,
My
hold
guy.
on. My guy. No, hold on. What I am saying here is that I'm not against tariffs. I think tariffs absolutely have their place in some manner or another. This is one of the reasons why I think Joe Biden kept those in place, because what he was trying to do was trying to bring steel and aluminum back to the United States as well, right? But the problem that's happening now is that Donald Trump is imposing blanket tariffs up to 10% on places that don't even have a population. We talked, was it the McDonald Islands or whatever it was? So the fact is,
Tax the penguins.
what? He's trying to tax the penguins?
He has to put a tariff on the penguins. And the reason why, my friend, it's very simple. Look, China was building warehouses in other countries. They were exporting to those warehouses, getting around the tariffs, and then they would send those goods here.
So first of all, a lot of people try to get around these tariffs. They try to, export it to another country that doesn't have or has a lower tariff. This was one of the reasons why, by the way, that the tariffs on China actually were not as impactful, because there was alternatives. The problem is that we're facing now is that we're having blanket tariffs on 150 different countries, up to 10%, and in China's case, up to 140% tariffs. A lot of goods. By the way, like our kids, Christmas gifts. By the way, if you want to get your kids Christmas gifts, you might want to get them now. Hey, real quick, I want to take a quick commercial break. Guys, listen, if you can please, we're up to 7,000 likes. Can we get up to 10,000 likes? Please make sure you hit that likes button and share this stream. Guys, for my YouTube watchers right now, welcome in. I see you guys in chat. I'm just trying to engage with this debate with Coca-Cola right now, but welcome everybody that's coming in. My YouTube watchers, please hit that like, subscribe, notification bell, so that way we can get pushed out to more people as well, and these debates can get sent out there. All right, back to the regular schedule programming. So
if the tariffs were not impactful, like you just said, why were they left in place?
Why were the tariffs less in place? I didn't know. So wait, hold on. I understand that those tariffs were
very
not
impactful.
No, hold on.
Great for our economy.
No, hold on.
Just admit it, man.
No,
Just
hold
admit
on.
it.
Hold on. So one of the reasons why that the prices didn't. So I don't. It's to as to whether or not it actually led to increased productivity. I would need to look more into that. I don't believe it.
We're one of the most productive countries in the entire world.
Now, hold on. So the problem, though, that I'm arguing from is more so on the fact that there was a not as high of a rise in prices at that time, due in part to alternatives. That's more of where I'm arguing from, is that the prices that increased were less dramatic because of the fact that they were targeted. All right. I'm more concerned about
energy down right now.
how much is energy down right now? It's down pretty good, I think, according to CPI numbers. But again, the one problem is that CPI
almost 10%, which would offset any tariffs, because anything you buy from another country comes on a truck, does it not? So when you
truck
crush
or
the
a boat
price
or
of
whatever.
energy,
Yeah.
when you crush the price of energy, inflation's going
Right.
to fall dramatically. It's going to be great for the consumer. These tariffs that we have in place now, 10%, energy falls 15%, that would be absolutely phenomenal and fantastic for the economy.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the I'm trying to pull up the EIA real quick. Would you agree with me then that under Joe Biden we saw record high levels of oil production?
Because of the policies put in place by his predecessor, 100% agree. But he did.
So the
oil production in many areas across millions of acres of land.
I'm curious because this is something that I see time and time again, is that MAGA loves to attribute any kind of positive that Joe Biden might have had
Just
to
like
the.
you. Just like you.
What are you talking about?
Where-
Do you wait? Do you hold on? Wait, can I?
Say you're against tariffs. Your boy Biden leaves them in
I'm
place.
no.
Then you admit
I
that
didn't
they're
say I was against
impactful.
tariffs. I didn't say I was against tariffs. If you listen to what I said, I was specifically against how Donald Trump, in and of himself, is actually imposing these tariffs. That is the problem that I have an issue with. That is the issue I have, because he's implementing a blanket tariff on every single country. And then on top of
Right.
it, they are now imposing tariffs right back onto us. Which then what that does is it causes companies to essentially freeze up their operations. We see investments like, for example, Microsoft leaving the United States. They had 3 data centers they were going to open up in Ohio, and they ended up leaving. So that is the problem I have. I don't have a problem against targeted tariffs. Targeted tariffs can work. However, the issue is that the way that Donald Trump is going about it is going to leave a stain on tariffs. And it's going to take years to try to renegotiate with some of our former allies. I say
It's not gonna
former.
take years. It's going to take days.
It's going to take days. So
We
why are
already
you
have
saying it's going to take
offers
days?
from multiple. We already have offers in from multiple other countries because we don't support free trade anymore. We need fair trade. We need to stop getting ripped off. China has ripped us off for over 30 years. Yes or no? Yes or no?
China has ripped us off for 30 years. What do you mean by that?
For over 30 years.
What do you mean by that?
They've
You there, Coco?
I'm just astounded.
You're just
that you
astounded.
say
I'm asking
yes
you
or
what
no
do
to
you
that.
I'm asking what do you mean by getting ripped off? If I need to understand what you
manipulation
mean.
to start with. Currency manipulation to start with.
Uh-huh. Okay, I would agree with that. It looks like they're I believe they're performing in some currency manipulation right now. Sure.
But as an American, you won't simply admit that China, a dictatorship, has ripped us off for over 30 years, and we shouldn't support.
I'm asking you, what do you mean by ripped off? How are they ripping us off?
When you manipulate your currency to be so low so that you can export, and you steal a tremendous amount of IP from American companies, and you rip off basically every American corporation and every American consumer, it's quite terrible, my guy.
Yeah, so I would agree with you on the IP front. I believe they have. My foreign relations knowledge is a little on the weaker side. I'll admit to that. But the thing about it is that I would agree with you. I would agree with you that they have ripped us off in some manner or another like that. The issue I have with this, though, is that there has to be a way we have to approach this in a manner that is not like this. Because the problem that we're going to face is record high inflation. So you have to navigate this with a scalpel and not a sledgehammer. And the way that Donald Trump is approaching it, for example, we talked about the steel and aluminum tariffs. If that was all that Donald Trump was doing, I'd probably be fine with that. I'd probably be fine with that. But the problem is that he keeps racking up that price. And the president, Xi Jinping or whatever. Do what?
It's a tactic to get other parties to the table so we can make better deals and get fair trade.
It's always a negotiation with Donald Trump, isn't it? It's always a negotiation. It's the art of the deal, right?
NAFTA got 1,000 times better.
What about the USMCA? What about the USMCA that he put in place?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. NAFTA was replaced by that, and it's a much better deal for Americans, is it not? Yes or no?
So wait, the USMCA did you say USMCA was the one that replaced NAFTA?
It's a better deal than NAFTA ever
It's a
was.
better deal than NAFTA. Even though Donald Trump himself has already said who put these deals in place, even though he was the one who put that USMCA in place, which, by the way, I think is hilarious because he's absolutely destroyed that USMCA is a pretty much null and void at this point. Because, again, the way that he's treated Canada and treated Mexico, Canada, I believe, has already said that they are removing numerous American products from their shelves.
You're scared of Canada.
I'm scared of Canada.
Oh, wow. Scared of the maple leaves, man.
Oh,
Look,
yeah. So would you agree we get a lot of our lumber from
80% of
Canada?
Canadian exports, 80% of Canadian exports come to the United States. 18% of our exports go to Canada. They have way more to lose than we do.
Oh,
And if
okay.
they wanna
So
play
we don't
chicken,
get any
we'll play
lumber from
chicken.
Canada then? We don't get any products, we don't have any major.
Of course we do. Of course we do.
Oh, okay. So
they need us way more than we need them.
we
And
don't
have
need
to
them for the
fair
lumber?
trade. Of course. You know, it would be great actually if the lumber came from the southeast.
Came from the southeast. You talking about just us, just destroying all the forests that we have already and just knocking it down and having American lumber. There's also a different kind of lumber. I believe it's a soft lumber that they're getting from up there.
If you look at sustainable forestry,
I have not looked at sustainable forestry, no. But
almost all of that's in the southeast. So it should be.
You think so? We have soft lumber in the
environmentally
southeast.
friendly.
Let me see. I don't know if that's the case. I'll have to look
Would
at
be
it.
more environmentally friendly. It would use our own lumber in a sustainable way. But instead, you would rather support China, who built over 100 coal power plants.
Okay, so
last
it's not soft. It doesn't look like it's soft lumber in the southeast, which is unique to northern. I believe soft lumber. Let me see used for. Soft lumber. Softwood lumber is commonly used in construction for framing, roofing, and flooring. And soft lumber is one of the ones that we bring in most from Canada. So again, you said we could just go to the southeast, but the problem is the lumber we get from the north, exactly like Avalon just said in the chat, lumber from the north is much better for building homes.
We
So
can
we
get it
can't.
from Montana. We can get it from Colorado, Washington State. There's alternatives.
So Montana's got soft lumber. Let me see.
And a 10% tariff isn't going to wreck our economy. In fact, if tariffs are 10% and energy's down 15%, that's a better deal for Americans. CPI is down. Inflation's down.
Oh, okay. So CPI is down. Would you agree then that Joe Biden brought the CPI down from 9% to 2.4%?
No, I would not agree.
You would not agree with that. That is just factually correct. He brought it down from
No.
9%. You don't believe he brought the CPI down from 9% to 9 to 2.4? You don't believe that? I can pull it up.
Not believe that. I don't care. I don't care what you pull.
I'm
up.
working with facts. That's all I'm trying to work with.
What if the CPI was so much lower? If Americans were living so much better, then why did they overwhelmingly vote for Donald Trump? Why?
Because of Donald Trump's propaganda message. And the reality is that no, hold on. I can explain.
Brainwashed.
No, hold on. Hold
There are
on.
More Americans
Hold
living
on.
paycheck to paycheck in 2024. Than
I can
2020
explain this if you just let me speak
because
for
it's
just
their fault.
Okay.
Right.
First of all, let me explain this very easily. Inflation is compounding. I'm not denying that there wasn't inflation. CPI measures year over year inflation. What that means, and it's compounding. So CPI is basically saying from year over year, this is how much it has increased. Inflation increases. The whole reason why in 1999 our gas prices were like 25 cents or whatever it was, okay, per gallon, or it might have been $1. But
Gas prices are going way down right now.
either way, what I'm trying to get on is that price was going up. People were feeling the pinch at the store, but understand what they weren't seeing is the bigger picture. And what I mean by that is that Donald Trump was able to capitalize on those rising grocery prices. He was also able to capture in some of the youth vote, which is one of the reasons why he was able to get in TikTok and things like that. There's a whole bunch of other layers there, but the economy was the number one reason for voters. Whether it was true or not, Donald Trump capitalized on that. And I will admit, Kamala Harris was a little bit on the weaker side of that because she was stuck in a predicament where she could either say that, hey, Joe Biden, that the economy, I understand you're feeling a pinch, but it's getting better. If she were to say it's getting better and people are saying, hey, my pocket's hurting, guess what? She's going to look like a liar, right? And the reality is the economy was getting better by all metrics. The stock market was hitting record highs. CPI was going down. Job claims were going down. We saw better economy. We saw chips manufacturers coming back to the United States through the CHIPS Act. There was numerous metrics that showed the economy was doing fabulous, but it takes a little bit to see that going. This whole reason, like you just said prior, that it takes time for the next administration to kind of get going because they're still inheriting.
Second year, the market was down, 20%, 22%, and bonds were also down double digits.
In his second year?
That was the first time that had happened since like 1933.
You're talking about his second year in office?
Yeah, second year in office.
Okay, I'm going to make sure we're clear here. We're on the same page. You agree that each president inherits some of their previous predecessors.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. So
am I wrong in that?
So you're blaming Trump for the first 3 months. Am I wrong in
For
that?
right now, yes. I can explain why. You want me to explain why?
Okay.
You want to explain why? I know it's hard for you to believe.
Not responsible for the first 3 months, but
no,
Donald
there is
Trump
some. No,
responsible
let me
for the
explain.
first
I can
2
explain.
years
No, stop.
of Joe
All
Biden.
right, let's dissect this.
Stop. And Joe Biden passed.
Don't tell me to stop. This is my stream. Don't tell me to stop.
What was the
Go
IRA?
ahead. What was the IRA? The Inflation Reduction Act.
And how much money did that?
Let me go to committee for.
Money was spent.
Yeah, I can go to committee for a fiscal
Biggest
responsible
spending
fiscal.
bill in American history. Called.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about spending. We can talk about
Inflation
spending. Yeah, I can talk about spending. We can go look at how much Donald Trump versus Joe Biden spent. Do you want to do that? Do you know how much that was?
COVID-19.
Okay, we could. Well, make sure we're saying C19 just because of TikTok. So if you look at the committee,
I know you love the Chinese and bootlicking.
hey, stop. Okay, look, I'm not making the rules. TikTok does. So the net 10-year debt approved under Donald Trump, that's non-2020, was 4.8 trillion. To Joe Biden, it was 2.2 trillion. He spent less than Donald Trump, and even if you were to include his little stimulus package, it was 2.1 trillion. Donald Trump's 2 stimulus packages, which again a lot of people forget about, was 3.6 trillion. So in total, Donald
How
Trump
much-
spent. Yeah.
I got a really good question for you.
Yeah. Good.
How much is a life worth?
How much is a life worth?
Yes. If you had to put a dollar amount on a life,
It's
what would
probably
that be?
it's probably invaluable. I mean, there's probably some people. This is a moral question, right? I mean, we could look at like this. I'm gonna be very careful because I'm
Donald
not sure where
Trump-
you're going with this, so I just want to be very careful.
Donald Trump unleashed Operation, what was it, Warp Speed, where we got 3 vaccines.
Okay,
out
hold on, stop.
before the Chinese.
I trust me. I would love to talk about this. We'd have to talk about this off of TikTok, respectfully. Like I cannot. I do not want to talk about this topic at all, only because I've seen what happens to lives on here. Talks about this. Okay, that's the only reason why. And when you talk about it,
And you ask why spending was so high. It needed to
The
be
spending-
high to
this-
save lives.
the spending not related to that event was for no.
That was like 100% related to that event. Are you kidding me?
It literally breaks it down on the Committee for a Responsible Fiscal Budget. It literally says $4.8 trillion.
And who's in charge of drafting the budget? Congress. And was Congress not?
Who signs off on the budget? Who signs off on all this? Who signs a bill?
The president.
The president. So the president signs off on this, and he's saying, "I agree to this." Then, right? If he didn't agree to it, he wouldn't have signed it, right?
Well, if he didn't agree to it, America would have gone bankrupt. We would have shut down, right?
Okay.
So it's either agree to it or shut down.
So wait.
Kept the
Okay.
country open, and we got vaccines out like faster than ever before.
So here's the
We
problem.
saved lives.
Here's the problem I'm having right now is that you're referring to 2020, and what I'm saying is regardless of 2020, okay, ignoring that, Donald Trump prior to that event spent $4.8 trillion. It's according to the Committee for a Responsible Fiscal Budget.
Keep looking at your numbers.
I'm looking. Okay, here I'll
just holding a beer.
give you the exact.
I'm just
I'll
holding
get.
a beer,
Let's
looking
break
at
it
the
down.
plate.
Let's break it down.
You're
I'll break it
looking
down.
at Google, and you need your little number.
I'm
Push
working
it
off of
through.
facts. Wasn't
Okay.
it MAGA that said facts don't care about your feelings? So here's the
Yeah,
thing.
it was MAGA that said that. And guess
Okay,
what?
that's great.
More Americans were living paycheck to paycheck in 2024 than ever.
Why were they
before.
living pay? Why were people with $150,000 a year living paycheck to paycheck? What was that? Why was
Joe
that?
Biden's policies?
That was because they were spending more money to buy bigger
blame the
homes, almost
Americans.
like they had more money in their
Blame the
pocket.
poor,
So
brainwashed Americans.
So it's called lifestyle creep. That's what the word I was looking for. By the way, so if you look at this exact 10-year debt impact from 2017 to 2021 under Donald Trump, there was a few different policies that increased the deficit quite a bit. One of which was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which increased the debt by $1.9 trillion. There was only one that actually saw, which is again why I say that tariffs were not terrible, is the new and increased tariffs under his first administration actually did decrease the deficit by about $443 billion. So that's a good thing in the way that it was done in the first time. This time is not the way that it should be done.
We don't know that yet. That is out. Jury's out.
Jury's out about what?
The tariffs. Jury's out. If energy goes down 15% and there's a 10% tariffs, that's 5% room for the consumer. Everything runs on a truck.
Okay, this is hilarious to
Energy
me.
prices, prices under Joe Biden were skyrocketing and out of control.
Energy
That's
prices
why
were going
more
down,
people
and there was
live
record
paycheck to
oil
paycheck.
production. There was record oil production. Would you agree with me
Because
on
of
that?
Trump's policies.
Because of
And then
Trump's
Biden-
policies.
And then
Okay.
Biden turned around and he blocked access to federal lands for drilling. So
Yeah. So hey, Coca-Cola, look, we've had a great conversation. I want to try to cycle more people. I promise you can come back in here Monday. I'm gonna be doing call-ins on Monday as well. I would love to have you in here, but I want to try to cycle through some guests as well. Okay. But
thanks for your time. And
absolutely, buddy.
yeah, thanks. Bye.
All right. So, real quick, guys, I want to acknowledge some of my people here over on YouTube as well as TikTok. First of all, TikTok, guys, hit that like button. We're almost at 10K likes. Hit that like button. The more that you like it, the more that you share the stream out, the more that people are going to see this stream. I would love to have these debates. I appreciate actually having that conversation with Coca-Cola. To my YouTube friends, please make sure you hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. Let's get this pushed out to more people. Right now, there's 110 of you guys watching. Let's get some more likes in here, please. All right. All right, guys. So let me go ahead and give me 1 second here. 1 second. Hold on. All right. Hold on 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. Oops. All right. Let me go over here. Okay. So make sure you hit that like button. Let's get to the next guest. I think we had a few guests. Troy is ready to go up here. Let's bring Troy in. Hey, Troy, what's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Hey, doing good. How about yourself?
Doing good. What's your age, state, and who did you vote for?
I am 32, state of Florida, and Donald J. Trump.
All righty. So we got a Trumper in here. Why did you vote for Donald Trump?
Well, I voted for Donald Trump because I thought he did a great job his first time, and I thought he'd do great again the second time. And so far, I'm pretty happy.
All righty. All right. So you think he did good in his first time? What do you agree that this time around is a little bit different than the first time?
Yeah, I agree. It's a little bit different, but still, more or less, I think we're on a better track than we were the previous 4 years.
Oh, than the previous 4 years. You think we're on a better track? What
Yes.
what gives you that indication?
Well, first of all, definitely him tackling the trade. I think the tariffs are great. I grew up in Michigan. I watched my entire hometown be hollowed out by these free trade agreements. So I'm glad that president's finally standing up to this crap.
Okay, so you think that these tariffs are going to help the economy in your local community? I think that's commendable, first and foremost. But I think the issue, though, we have with this is that you would have to acknowledge that these tariffs are going to lead to new inflation, right? Like, you would agree with that, right?
I mean, so I got a question for you. Do you think that we should increase corporate taxes or lower corporate taxes?
I think it's a balancing act because I understand that the increased expenses do tend to get passed down to the consumer. So I do think we should probably increase them quite a little bit. I don't know to what degree I would say so. That's why I put myself in more of the liberal stance, because it's kind of one of those things that are more borderline. I still believe that companies ought to operate how they ought to operate within the confines of the law. I do believe that some companies will take advantage of some consumers or certain crises. For example, we saw this with egg prices and things like that, right? Where retailers, for example, are keeping prices elevated. If you want to say they're down in some areas, fine, but they're still elevated and compared to the wholesale prices. So I do think that they need to have some kind of an increase in their tax rate. Do I think it should be outlandish, like 50% to 100%? No. I think it should be increased to just a little bit. You do something like 50% to 100%, just like we're seeing with tariffs, you're going to see a dramatic increase in prices.
Okay, so yeah, so as you're saying, but if you increase corporate taxes, they're going to raise the prices anyway. So I think that it's smarter to tax the companies that are shipping our jobs overseas instead of taxing the companies keeping work here.
When you're saying tax the companies, you do realize that these tariffs are going to be a tax on everyday consumers, right?
Yes, just like a corporate tax is also passed down to everyday
Correct.
consumer.
Would you agree if, like, I don't know what the corporate tax rate right now currently is. I believe it's at 21%.
21, 23, 21, something like that. Yeah.
So if it were to increase, let's say 21 to 23%, okay. First of all, that's going to be for, I believe, any company that's operating within the United States. So if there's a company that has a home base outside of the United States, I believe it changes a little bit. I'd have to look at it again. But the issue with that is that even then, this is not going to be as big or broad. You would have to agree with me that an increase for a corporate tax rate from, say, 21 to 25% is much different than having a broad tariff on 150 countries at a 10% tariff rate. You would have to agree with me that those increases are going to be dramatically more high than it would be with just the corporate tax rate. You would agree with me on that, right? Like, I would agree with you they increase prices, but the degree to which they increase prices would be much different, right?
Now, like I said, if you want to avoid those tariffs and those costs, you can build your companies here. We can lower corporate rate and offset it by tariffing companies that want to offshore, like Nike.
So, well, I'm glad you mentioned that. So if they were to come back here to the United States, but they still have to get their raw materials from other countries, and those other countries are being tariffed, you would still agree that they are incurring a tariff. I mean, a virtual tariff. They're going to be getting tariffed on the raw materials that are coming out from these other countries.
I really don't agree with that argument, because we used to be able to do it here all the time, all the way up until the 90s. And then magically we all of a sudden can't produce here anymore.
Well, I'm not saying that we can't produce here. Notice what I just said. If we want companies to come here, sure. But the problem is that, well, one, some of these are low quality jobs. Manufacturing is great. Don't get me wrong. But I'd prefer us to not go back to the sweatshops era of the 1900s. But aside from that,
So
feeling.
it's okay for people in the third world, I mean global
I
south.
I
to
don't
be
agree with
working
that
in
either.
sweatshops.
I don't agree
So
with
then
that
why
either.
are you defending companies that do that?
Yeah, I'm not. Well, first of all, I'm not defending companies that do
You
that.
are if you're saying
No,
no
because I don't
tariffs.
want them to do that either. But we're kind of in a predicament right now where we want. What I'm saying is I don't mind companies coming here to the United States, but the problem is that you still have to source raw materials from other countries. You can't get around that. There are some countries that, remember that rare earth minerals, right, that they talk about all the time that are only in certain countries, whether it be for electric vehicles or auto manufacturing or whatever it may be. There are still raw materials that have to be sourced from other countries. And those other countries will be facing tariffs. From all intents and purposes, we're looking at about 150 countries so far that Donald Trump has listed having tariffs with a baseline of 10%. And then China has 144%, I think, right now, or 145 or whatever. And so that's what I'm trying to say is that you can bring it back to the United States, but you also have to acknowledge it takes time to bring it back to the United States. And we've already seen, going back to your earlier comment about, you're seeing some of the progress. Well, I can point to, for example, where Microsoft has pulled their 3 data centers from Ohio. And some of the progress we're seeing about chips manufacturers that are coming here are really due in part to Joe Biden's CHIPS Act. And Donald Trump somewhat admits to that. It's a little buried in some of his executive orders, but it's there in the executive order. I looked at it. They're using the CHIPS framework, but they're trying to make it more efficient.
Okay, but the guy the from the company, the chips company in Taiwan building in Arizona, that had
Yes.
nothing to do with the
Yes, it did.
CHIPS Act.
Yes, it did. So if you look at it, I believe they had announced that, I believe it was in November or October. I think it's TSMC, I think is the name of that chips manufacturer. Let me see, chips manufacturer Biden. Because there was one I saw with that. Let me see if I can pull it up. Yes. So here we go. This was November 15th. So this is like just shy after the election. The Biden administration provided TSMC, a major semiconductor manufacturer, with $6.6 billion in funding and up to $5 billion in loans under the CHIPS and Science Act. This funding is earmarked for TSMC to build 3 cutting-edge chip fabrication plants in Phoenix, Arizona. So again, the TSMC, and to understand what's going on with these chips manufacturers is that there has already been, through the Biden administration, companies that have come here and built these chips that are mainly used in AI. And so what's happening is now that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have successfully brought some of these chips manufacturers here to the United States, those companies that use these AI chips are now following them because they want to be closer to where they're making these chips. This is what we saw with, like, say, Apple, because Apple is using these AI chips. So you have to understand that when Apple comes in here, that's because of the TSMC being here in the United States. That's because of Joe Biden. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, I think the guy did increase investments when Trump got in, and knowing probably new tariffs were coming, so he's invested more here.
Well, no. So Microsoft pulled out. Microsoft pulled 3 data centers out of Ohio. This was announced, I think, this past week.
Okay, and for every H-1B visa-filled Microsoft data center that gets pulled, another factory gets opened up.
Sure. I wouldn't disagree with that, I guess, but I don't know if I would say every single one. I don't know if it's to that necessarily a ratio, unless you got something that I don't
We've
have.
got Honda opening up a plant from Mexico, actually opening in Indiana now because of the tariffs.
I would caution on saying that. And the only reason I say that is because the auto manufacturers really rely on crossing borders. So when we talk about bringing manufacturing here to the United States, Honda may make some part or some piece of the vehicle here, but it goes up and down. Like sometimes it'll go to Canada, then it'll go to Mexico, and then it'll finish it over here maybe in America or the United States. And so when I say, you're still going to be, if Trump doesn't resolve any kind of, tariff on Canada, car manufacturers are not going to be able to take it to their shop up north. We saw this.
Well, maybe they should quit doing that. They could build it in Michigan. Why are they going to Canada? Why are we wasting all that extra fuel to send stuff across countries over and over and over again? Build it here. It's being sold here. It can be built here.
I mean, I would have to look at the auto manufacturers as to why specifically they're building it up in Canada. But I get what you're saying is why not bring them down here back to the United States? The problem is that, again, you're talking about continual capital investments. You have a hostile market right now here in the United States just because of how they're treating. Now, granted, the Trump administration, if I were to give any kind of like credit to the Trump administration, they seem to know that they don't want to put any tax on auto manufacturers, because that's like the one thing that's the rallying cry for, I guess you could say, blue collar America, right? Is he understands that, and that's why he's trying to carve out certain exemptions for auto manufacturers.
Well, aren't a lot of that stuff under the USMCA, which I believe is not being affected by these tariffs?
So I believe you are correct to a certain degree, but the problem is that Donald Trump has already kind of gone against that, right, by imposing and going after Canada and Mexico. It's one of those things where, like, the USMCA is in existence, but it's also at the same time kind of not, right? I think it was Canada. No. So what it was Trump pretty much, I believe, has violated the USMCA, but Canada said we are still going to try to do what we can to abide by the terms in the USMCA. So they imposed tariffs back on the United States within a certain framework that was designated within the USMCA, if my memory serves me right. So,
But like I said, I do believe these tariffs need to be put in place to even the playing field against these sweatshops, against the slave labor, against the child labor, the lack of environmental laws. I mean, why are we bringing in products that we would never, ever allow to be built here by children and spewing factories?
yeah, I mean, like I said, I
And
talked
then
about.
they say, "Oh, that's free competition. It's fair trade." Like, what? Why is that being defended by the Democratic Party? I don't understand.
Well, so I'm glad you mentioned the Democratic Party, because you would agree with me. Recently, there was a recent poll that came out that showed they had like a 20% approval rating. And what I would say to that is that they are not, listening to their constituents. They are not following their constituents. Their constituents.
Oh, yeah, because the same billionaires they're yelling about that bought off Trump are the same billionaires buying them off. That's why everyone thinks it's the oligarchy tour is such a joke, because it's like, you guys have J.B. Pritzker. You have just as more billionaire money than the Republicans do.
No, I disagree with that. You have to agree with me that Elon Musk is literally the world's richest man, and he is literally like the wallet for Donald Trump.
Billionaires supported Kamala. So
And I
you got
guarantee you,
one-
every single billionaire that was supporting Kamala pales in comparison to what is the value under Elon Musk. I guarantee you that.
Please, they get the same money from the same oligarchs. That's why it's falling on deaf ears. It's like, oh, let me give this speech about how bad the oligarchs are. Let me go get a check from Goldman Sachs for giving a 20-minute speech.
If you're going to complain, I mean, it sounds like you are agreeing with me, though, on Elon Musk, though, right? Like, you would agree with me with Elon Musk having the...
Oh, sure, I agree
Okay.
with you there, but it's also very hypocritical then to just run around the country yelling about it after they took millions and millions of dollars from Elon Musk themselves in previous cycles.
I think you would actually be surprised at how many people would not really agree with what you're saying on this, because I think there's a lot of people, and I've been on online spaces for the past 6 years, and they have all, even with Joe Biden, and the one thing that the left does not like is they do not like Joe Biden. I actually still believe this to this day. I think that people who voted for Joe Biden on the left only voted for Joe Biden for the simple fact there's
The media told them to.
No, I wouldn't say the media, but what I would say is because of the fact that Donald Trump was such a divisive figure, and we also had right after there was a lot of events that took place in 2020 that some I can't talk about on TikTok, but there was also the BLM stuff that happened. They rallied around that. They only voted in Joe Biden because he wasn't Donald Trump. Joe Biden was and this is why you have a lot on the left. They're like, I don't really support Joe Biden, but Joe Biden did do some things that were pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things where, like, we don't really agree with some of the things, and they don't like the establishment as well. The left doesn't like the establishment Dems
But then
that
they
are out
run
there.
out and vote for Joe Biden in the primary. The
Because
most establishment bought-off figure they could find. Joe Biden's the reason why you cannot file bankruptcy on student loans. And then they really thought that, yes, when he was a senator, he was the one that pushed, and he was also the one that got the legislation passed as a senator to make sure they could garnish your Social Security on student loans. And
Sure.
then these idiots thought that he was going to get rid of student loan debt. Please.
No, so I mean, look, first of all, he tried. That's the whole reason why we saw.
No, he didn't. He made it fail on purpose. He knew he would do it in a way.
You
that
got to
would
provide
fail
some
on
kind of evidence to
purpose.
suggest that he tried to make it fail on
Oh,
purpose.
I mean, because of all the millions he received from credit card companies and banks that he wouldn't
That's
do that?
that's correlation does not equal causation. I would
Oh,
agree.
okay, so then with Elon Musk, correlation does not mean causation.
There's a little difference there, and then the reason why
No,
there is
correlation
no,
doesn't mean
hold on.
Yeah.
Just because Elon Musk is sitting by the president, I would agree with you. That in and of itself is not an exhibit of some kind of corruption or anything of that nature. However, what is a direct actual link is when Elon Musk goes and tries to campaign for somebody that is very patently pro MAGA, essentially, in Wisconsin, I believe it was, putting it to the tune of like what, 1 billion, or not 1 billion. It was like 100. Was it $1 billion? How much was
please, that woman received a bunch of billionaire money too.
Okay, hold on. We're talking about Elon Musk specifically right now.
No,
Yeah, we are.
You can't sit there and talk about Elon Musk and then turn a blind eye to her.
Okay, let's backtrack a little bit to our conversation though, right? Because earlier you said I was using correlation equals causation with Elon Musk, and I provided evidence right now, and you're like, well, whoa, let's not talk about Elon Musk. No, we're going to talk about Elon Musk, and that's what I'm trying to tell you is if you look at Elon Musk, he put money into that campaign for that pro MAGA Supreme Court justice. So again, when we sit here and talk about the influence of Elon Musk, yeah, there's a direct causation, right? That Trump is, and I wholly believe this as well, because we can look at the fact of the last year's elections where he put massive amounts of money through the America PAC, by the way, into Donald Trump's campaign. So Donald Trump is absolutely using Elon Musk as a wallet for any kind of Republican that steps out of line. Why do you think Republicans don't want to step out of line right now? Because Donald Trump is Elon Musk by him. Elon Musk has the money and wealth and capability fully with the America PAC to get rid of any kind of dissenter.
Okay, I'll give you a great example. So Kamala Harris, she was for Medicare for All in 2020. She gets over $700 million from United Healthcare. All of a sudden, she's against it.
Let me see that. I gotta look that.
Look it up on Open Secrets. Type in United Healthcare.
So, wait, you said that because she received the $700 million from United Healthcare, that all of a sudden that is why she was for or against Medicare for All?
I mean, this thing's pretty convenient. I mean, you can't sit there and talk about oligarchs and then take money from oligarchs and then switch positions. Like, why does someone switch on Medicare for All on a dime like that?
So let's go to Open Secrets, United Health Group. They've actually donated $211,000 to the Republican National Committee.
How much do they give to Kamala Harris?
They contributed $700,000. That is correct. But again, there was still $211,000 that was received. And keep in mind too that some of this, by the way, I believe, it's organizations themselves cannot contribute to candidates and party committees. So what this was, it was from individuals. That's why it literally says from individuals, $742,000. And even for Republicans, it was $211,000. The only one from organization was the National Republican Congressional Committee, and that was $30,000. There was about 110,000 over the course of this is cycle of 2024 that was given to Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, and Democrat Lieutenant Governors Association. But that's from the organization in and of itself. That $700,000 number did not come from United Healthcare. It came from their employees.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So yeah, I mean, so they're bought off by the same oligarchs at the end of the day. So and when I hear, I think, like I said, going back to that 20%, I mean, that's why when we see them taking PAC money, billionaire money, and then they're just like, oh, oligarchs. Okay, that's fine.
Well, no, I mean, like I said, I think that the left, generally speaking, is still against billionaires and stuff like that. They want to get money out of politics like that. I've not seen many leftists who really want to, that simp for billionaires. I think a lot of them actually don't like the fact that there's billionaires. In fact, we can look at Chuck Schumer as well, where they want to get rid of Chuck Schumer, who's probably received tons of money. And we're seeing some new candidates rise up. I think it's like AOC as well, Jasmine Crockett as well, that I don't believe have received quite a bit from billionaires, but I have to look at that to be exact. So, yeah. But yeah, hey man, we're I got one more caller I want to get in before I get off. But hey Troy, it was a great.
One more thing. Yeah,
before
we go. When you were talking about the oil, so I just want to get on that one where you're like, oh well, Biden unleashed record amounts of oil. Yeah. So when Trump took office in Obama's last year, I think we were pumping about 10 million barrels. In Trump's second to last year, there was a dip because of COVID. I think we're up to about 13 million barrels.
Mm-hmm.
Then in Biden's last year, it went up to 13.5 million. So it's he just got one more little drop in. It really wasn't that much of a difference.
Hold on. I'm looking up U.S. field oil production. And when Joe Biden, I'm starting Zoom. I hate this Zoom so much. I'm looking at the EIA right now. I hate this little Zoom button. So December of 2024, it was 13,451, and at the peak in 2020 was 12,994. So he did. So here's the funny thing about this that you really haven't said much about is that as of May 2020, it dipped down. Where was it when Joe Biden took office? That's what you should really look at, right? If you look at where Joe Biden took office in January, it was 11,152,000 barrels per day.
That was because of we were in the middle of the C word and we weren't
Right.
really. But if you look in 2019, the year before,
I mean, like I said, either way you look at it, Joe Biden produced more and he rallied U.S. field production of crude oil. Now, if you're asking me to point to a specific policy, I would believe he opened up some, but I have to look at it again on some of his oil production policies. But as far as the data goes, it definitely increased. It was the highest that it had ever been under Joe Biden. So I'll let you get the last word in. I'll let you get the last word in, Troy. I got to get into the next viewer before
my last word is Democrats, they get mad when you take their slave labor away. That's my last word. They hate it when you put tariffs on their sweatshops. They hate it when you take away their cheap labor from Mexico and Central America. They get mad when you take their slave labor away.
I'll let you have that last word, Troy. Thank you so much for jumping in, buddy. All right, let's go to the next guest. Let's bring in Coolero. By the way, guys, hey, look, do me a favor, guys. Hit that like button. If you're on my TikTok stream, let's hit that like button. Let's get that stream out there a little bit more. I'm probably going to go for about another 30 more minutes or so. YouTube, you guys out there, I see you on YouTube, y'all. What's the source? I don't care about oil policies. Wilson, the source is the EIA. Carrie said, overall, Trump and Elon are ridding corruption, and that is a fact. That's why I'm happier. When it turns out Trump and Elon are not getting rid of corruption, they're actually committing more corruption. All right, looks like Cool Arrow is not going to join in. That's okay. All right. Lay said, Colts are great. They build a sense of community. Go MAGA. Yeah. Guys, listen to me. Let's see. Let's look at TikTok here. Stay mad. Why would I stay mad? Big Country Troy, leave the conspiracies alone. They don't do much good for you, clearly. Yeah. What's up, Big Country? Hey, Big Country, I feel like I've seen you around on a few panels, by the way. Welcome in, though, guys. Welcome in. Vince, you're talking nonsense. I don't know what you're talking about. He said, this guy's talking like he is better with money than Trump. Honestly, I probably am better with money than Donald Trump. Who runs the EIA? Right now, who is the head of the EIA? Let's see. Who is head of EIA? Current head of the U.S. Energy and Information Administration is Stephen Nally, who is serving as acting administrator. He was appointed as deputy administrator in 2018. So there you go. He was appointed under Donald Trump and became acting administrator in January of 2025. So Donald Trump's appointee. Yep. There you go. So he was under the Joe Biden administration. It's a good thing I believe in facts. Then, yeah, facts don't care about people's feelings. So much corruption that they file no charges. Doesn't have to be actual per se corruption, and even if there was, you're relying on like Pam Bondi's office to actually provide charges. Good luck. That's just not going to happen. So I wasn't talking to you. I was talking about them. Oh, got you, Cardi. I got you. Okay, guys, look. We got 10,000 likes on TikTok. I think all my viewers on TikTok, I appreciate every single one of you guys. There's not a whole lot left. There's not a whole lot of callers that kind of called in yet. And it's getting late. I got to do some homework and stuff as well. So, but I appreciate every single one of you guys on TikTok that called in. I want to make sure I call in a little bit. I start live a little bit earlier with you guys on Monday. And we'll be doing it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Okay? So, but YouTube, guys, everyone, make sure you follow me. Please hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. TikTok, I'm going to let you guys go first. I appreciate every one of you guys. Make sure you hit that follow button. If you're not following me already, make sure you hit a like on one of my videos too. You want to, show some love. All right, guys, take care. Y'all are great, and y'all have a great time. All right? All right, so YouTube. There you go. I told you I was going to do a TikTok debate. It was tough, but you know what? That was actually a lot smoother than I thought it was going to be, okay? I'm exhausted. Debating is exhausting, and I started this thing at about 7:30, and now it's been about 2.5 hours. So it's been pretty crazy. How galactic stupid you must be. I'm pretty good. But anyways, I'm going to bounce out. I'm going to bounce out, guys. It's been great talking to you guys. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, notification bell if you haven't already. I will see you guys on Monday. All right? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please make sure you hit that like, subscribe, notification bell to get notified of all future videos. And I hope you watch the next video. Thank you so much.